and good evening. I'm Melisa Idris.
And I'm Sharaad Kuttan.
You're watching Consider This, the show where we want you to consider and then reconsider what you know of the news of the day. Today is International Orangutan Day, a day meant to help encourage the public to take action in protecting our closest animal relative. Orangutans are only found in 2 places in the world, Sumatra and Borneo. And it's important for us to better understand how the threats against the orangutan population and how to conserve this population. Joining us on the line now to help us better understand this, we have from Kota Kinabalu, Donna Simon, Manager for Orangutan Conservation for WWF-Malaysia, and Fredinand Lobinsiu, Manager for Habitat Restoration and Connectivity for WWF-Malaysia. Welcome to the show, folks. It's good to have you here. Now, allow me to begin with Donna and help us set the scene as to understanding what World Orangutan Day is meant to accomplish. What does it hope to accomplish?
For the World Orangutan Day, we hope to raise more awareness about orangutans. And for WWF Malaysia, we are advocating for the protection of its habitat, improving its habitat quality through forest restoration, and also to maintain connectivity for isolated orangutan populations through establishment of ecological corridors. So we've been working with government agencies as well as public companies to establish ecological corridors in their land. So these activities hopefully will help to maintain the orangutan population in Sabah.
Donna, it's very interesting that, you know, as an animal that perhaps has a global reach and visibility, it also carries a name that is Malay in origin. And I wonder if here in Malaysia, we quite understand the nature of this creature, a primate, one of our closest relatives, in fact, in ecological and evolutionary terms. Is there enough done locally in Malaysia, in schools, by the media, and so on, to raise awareness beyond just this particular International Day?
Throughout the years, we see a positive improvement. There's a lot of awareness coming. A lot of people, especially the younger generations, have at least a basic understanding of nature. And of course, for orangutans, it's far different from where I was before. I grew up in an oil palm plantation in Sandakan when I was younger, so I have zero knowledge about conservation, about nature. But now, even with the younger generation, 6 or 7 years old, they already have understanding what orangutan looks like. So I guess that a lot of awareness has been going on, and a lot of people are aware of this species.
Fredinand, if I could bring you into the conversation, maybe you can help us understand just how endangered is this species?
Okay. First of all, I want to wish you a happy International Orangutan Day. Okay. The orangutan is enlisted in red list in IUCN, so it's totally endangered.
The sustainability of the population, are we looking at them on the brink of extinction, or is the population still large enough for it to be sustained and perhaps even grow in the future?
Okay, for Sabah, and in the Sabah context, the population is still maintained. We have about 11,000 orangutans, so we want to maintain that.
Okay, and your role, Fredinand, is Manager for Habitat Restoration and Connectivity. Donna alluded to that a little bit earlier about the ecological corridors. Can you explain a little bit more about why ecological corridors and the preservation of that is important for the orangutan population?
Orangutan are threatened by habitat degradation, habitat conversion, and also habitat fragmentation. So ecological corridors actually help to connect between isolated populations. So the population is considered as not viable if they have less than 250 individuals. So ecological corridors are established mostly in private land. For example, in Sabah, we are working with Sawit Kinabalu Berhad and as well as Sabah Softwood to maintain connectivity for forest-dependent species. So that sets aside land specifically for these animals and orangutans, and we do restoration along this corridor to ensure that the connectivity is maintained, because without connectivity, if the population is too small, then it will cause local extinction.
Fredinand, if I could ask you, pretty much on the same vein, one of the difficulties, considering that the population of orangutan are scattered over 2 countries, Malaysia and Indonesia, and then, as Donna alluded to, the stakeholders also include plantations, large plantation owners, perhaps even smallholders. Is coordinating all those different stakeholders a monumental challenge? I mean, how difficult, in your experience, if you could tell us a little bit about your experience in getting those stakeholders to talk to each other?
Okay. We are working so many stakeholders between Indonesia and also Malaysia, especially Sabah and Sarawak. The only thing, the platform that we use is using constant communication with all the stakeholders, like in the meeting, and then if we want to propose new work for orangutan conservation, we include everybody so that we are in the same page how to we do the conservation work in Malaysia and also Indonesia. So we are including everybody, like the government of Malaysia, WWF Indonesia, and also WWF Malaysia.
Okay. How do you work with different stakeholders? For instance, with palm oil plantations, their priorities might be profit-driven as opposed to conserving orangutan habitats.
Okay, in Sabah, our state is actually going towards 100% RSPO certified. So in the RSPO certification scheme, the oil palm companies have to set aside to have conservation input in their oil palm management. So we try to latch on that. So we provide help to ensure that this oil palm plantation get 100% RSPO certified. So we assist them. At the same time, we try as much as possible to advocate for this establishment of corridor.
Okay.
So most of the corridors are actually in the land. So based on our experience, they are very open to work with conservation.
Can you help me understand the role of rehabilitation centers for orangutans, like the one we have in Sipilok, right? How do centers like that work with in conserving orangutans in the wild?
So in Sabah, we only have one rehabilitation center in Sipilok, but WWF, we are supporting in situ or ex situ orangutan conservation, which is wild orangutan population. But we understand for rehabilitation area like Sipilok, they have to accept. Sometimes there are cases of orphan orangutan being sent to Sipilok, so they need to teach the orangutan to adapt to the wild environment, so that once they are ready, they can transfer them back to the wild population.
Fredinand, if I could bring you back into this conversation, tell us a little bit about your own relationship to orangutan. How did you get involved? And when people perhaps only see images of orangutan, they've never encountered orangutan. What is the orangutan as a species, as an individual, as a feeling being? Is it a very extraordinary encounter when you meet an orangutan?
Okay, there are 2 types of orangutan. The one is the one that in sanctuary, the one that Donna mentioned before. It's a Sipilok. That one is they're already used to see human presence. But for my experience in the field, like our project site in Bukit Piton, first-class forest reserve. The orangutan there is a little bit wild, not a little bit, it's wild orangutan there. So they tend to very territorial. And then when they see human, if they're not feel easy, they tend to throw branches just to chase you away. Or if you ignore that sign, they're starting to use another method, which is pissing on you.
Right.
It's that is a very good experience to see that. Oh, it's very different from the sanctuary and from the wild.
Okay.
So that is my experience encounter orangutan in the wild.
Fredinand and Donna, we're going to ask you to stay on the line. We're going to take a quick break, but after this, let's continue this conversation about the conservation of the orangutan population. Stay tuned to Consider This. Hi, if you've just joined us, you're watching Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris. With me is Sharaad Kuttan. We're celebrating International Orangutan Day with the good folks from WWF-Malaysia. Donna Simon, she's the manager for orangutan conservation, and Fredinand Lobinsiu, he is the manager for habitat restoration and connectivity. Fredinand, I want to come back and ask you a little bit about. You talked about your work with Project Spike. How has the COVID-19 pandemic and the MCO, the lockdown, how has that affected your work in the field particularly?
Okay. Due to COVID-19, most of us were in the lockdown, which restricted our movement. This included going to the field for groundwork. So all the field work was postponed, and we are only started our groundwork in June 2020. However, on the positive note, during the lockdown, orangutans were sighted again in pouring hot spring in Ranau, Sabah, for many years because of the lack of human presence there. And also the same thing happened in Telupid, beside at the roadside during the MCO. There were a sighting of orangutan just roaming around there. So it's very rare to have this kind of sighting during a normal day. And apart of the challenges to COVID-19, it also provided us with an opportunity to learn, which is COVID-19 has taught us that viruses can spread animal to human. Therefore, we need a clear buffer and boundary between our zone and also the animals. When we destroy the forest and the habitat of the wildlife, this will get us closer contact with the wildlife, and then it's like the increase of contact. And also increase in poaching, potential poaching, as well as our vulnerability to zoonotic diseases. So forest restoration, I think it's clear the only way to mitigate this issue, providing more functional connectivity to wildlife, and to not having too close contact with us humans.
Donna, if I could ask you about, human orangutan potential conflict. And I understand that over the years, in fact, some of it has appeared in mythology and folklore about the relationship between human beings and orangutan. Not always a happy one. There's a whole range of cultural contexts and historical mythologies around orangutan-human contact. But what is it like on the ground in Sabah, at least, between human communities and orangutan communities? Is the conflict intense? And when it happens, what forms of resolution could there be for such conflict?
Usually, most of the conflicts actually happen in the, I think, around 90s or 2000, because that's when the oil palm expansion actually happened in Sabah. But now, there are less human and orangutan conflict, because most of the oil palm actually already matured. But now we are also in the midst of replanting the oil palm plantation with new ones. So there might be an increase in the conflict in the future, because orangutan likes to eat the cambium, the young oil palm.
Donna, could you describe the kind of conflict? Could you give us a picture of what conflict might look like between human populations and orangutan populations?
Okay. For example, recently what happened is in Tawau Hills Park, there's an orangutan coming out from Tawau Hills Park, going into one of the locals. Maybe they sell durian for a living. So the orangutan actually likes to eat durian. So they come into their orchard and then they eat the durian. So and one of other things are orangutan coming into oil palm plantation to eat the cambium, or young shoots of oil palm trees.
Okay, so that's a type of conflict. And, you know, when you talked about the early 2000s or the 90s, that's when Borneo's orangutan population plummeted by about 50%, a loss of 100,000 individuals within 16 years, and that is tragic. And I do want to ask Fredinand, if I could ask you the biggest threats to the orangutan population. You talked about deforestation or palm oil plantations, and you mentioned poaching just now. How big of a problem is poaching to orangutan populations?
Probably last time, before orangutan listed as a class 1 protection species, probably there's a lot of people poach it. I'm not so sure about meat, but probably maybe to take them as a pet or something. But since the elevation of the level of the protection of orangutan from to class 1 protection, it's like there's I'm not sure, but there's less poaching for orangutan I've heard since then. So
Is that to do with more education? Are we more aware that it is wrong to have orangutans as pets?
yes, probably I would personally I will agree on that. And plus if you poach orangutan because it's a class 1 protection, if you poach them and you will get legal action like jails and also some monetary fines.
Donna, could you help us understand what are the priorities now for conservationists with regard to orangutan communities? What should we be keeping in mind foremost as we take this conversation forward? What is important?
So, for now, at least for WWF-Malaysia, what we did in Sabah is we are looking at protecting this orangutan habitat. So in my work, I actually try to identify where are these orangutan habitat through our aerial nest survey activities. So every time when we flew over, every time we see nests, we check their location. So when we come to the office, we layer the orangutan information, orangutan distribution map with the forest degradation map. So by doing that, we can identify where are these degraded orangutan habitats. So from there, we advocate to the government or to the local, to the landowner to restore these areas and to establish forest connectivity.
Right. And what about you, Fredinand, today on International Orangutan Day? What can we as the public do to help?
Okay, there's many ways, but Okay, I just have like a few suggestions here for people to help us conserve orangutan. Okay, I mean how you can help. The public can help to safeguard the orangutan population in Sabah through the following steps. First, reuse. Apply the 3R concept: reuse, reduce, and recycle paper. In this way, we will eventually reduce the demand for paper and therefore decrease the number of trees cut down for human consumption. And then also be vigilant. Report to Sabah Wildlife Department should you have come across the selling or buying of wildlife that's usually sold in parks. These include but are not limited to orangutans, elephants, pangolins, sun bear, and others.
Okay.
And use roundtable on sustainable palm oil, RSPO, and Forest Stewardship Council FSC certified products.
Okay. Fredinand, thank you so much for speaking with us. Donna as well, thank you for your time and your insights. Happy International Orangutan Day to both of you, and thanks for joining us on the show. That's all the time we have for you on this episode of Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris.
And I'm Sharaad Kuttan, signing off for the evening.
Thank you so much for watching, folks. Good night.